Hey guys, Omni here. Today we're going to be checking out the breakdowns from New Rockstar for the first 2 episodes of The Mandalorian. We're a little bit behind on this as other things have been kind of getting in the way. More like behind the scenes stuff here has kind of taken up a little of my time, so I haven't been able to keep up with these. And hopefully going into next week, going into episode 3, we'll be able to do these a little more timely, but we'll see. So we're going to be doing both the ones that we've missed. Just in this video. Make sure to support New Rockstars. Subscribe to them if you're not already. Links to both original videos without me pausing and stopping and talking over and interjecting will be down in the description below. With that all said, guys, if you haven't seen my reaction to this, well, the first 2 episodes, go check them out. But for now, let's go ahead and jump into the breakdown. Here we go.
New Rockstars, I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 1, Chapter 17, The Apostate. From Purgle hyperspace whales to creepy culty baptisms with Jimmy Kimmel's nephew. Dank, Eric, it
really?
feels good to be back in
Interesting.
Star Wars. And yes, I look and sound different right now because I'm shooting this in the New Rockstars Burbank office. But in future weeks, I'll be back in my little hole. Hey, by the way, you can watch my behind-the-scenes initial research process for this breakdown in yesterday's live stream on the Deep Dive channel, and Tommy and I tackled all the big questions in our Wookiee Leaks after show. I love talking Star Wars with that guy, but here, right here, let's break down all the Easter eggs, references, and visual details that you might have missed. Because yes, we do have some translations of alien languages. And the best way to support our network is to grab one of our Mando-inspired shirts at NerdRide.
I like that.
The opening Lucasfilm fanfare,
might have to pick that one up.
A series of droids in metallic helmets with the glow of red and blue lightsabers waving over them. We see Darth Vader, R2-D2, and then the helmet of Fennec Shand, an Imperial pilot, Bo-Katan's helmet, IG-11, a speeder bike stormtrooper, the armorer, and then Din Djarin. Interesting that we paired the armorer with Din Djarin. I believe that the armorer may be the villain of this season. But over all this, we hear some hammering. The sounds
maybe.
Of the armorer
We'll see.
Forge in a cave. This, of course, is a favorite Hephaestian archetype of Jon Favreau from his first Iron Man film, and the sounds of hammering played over the credits of Tony Stark's last MCU movie, Avengers Endgame. But here in Star Wars, it starkly reminds us that this series is, at its core, the story of the Mandalorian people and the cultish creed of the Watch. It's as much about hammers and helmets as it is about sabers and starfighters. And the imagery of this opening scene is shot like a sacred religious ceremony filled with symbolism and magic. Now, if you first thought that we were actually watching a flashback to Din Djarin's baptism, that may have actually been by design. The actor they picked does vaguely look similar to the young actor they used for young Din. It speaks to the cyclical timelessness.
I wasn't too sure initially.
Rituals. By saving these people, adult Din Djarin is saving his past self. He is intervening in nature's cruel attempt to stymie the Watch's succession. The armor pours in this tempering liquid to cast the Beskar, and it causes a turquoise shimmer in the water, giving some mysticism to this clan's ritual. It's like the anointing with oil in a Christian sacrament, a sign of a higher power at work. Favreau did confirm that to contrast the Eastern philosophical underpinnings of the Jedi Code, for the Mandalorians, they pulled from a variety of religions, including Western warrior codes like those of the Romans. And the Romans were warriors.
Interesting.
Who were
I like that.
The religious faction within Rome, a little cult called Christianity. Hey, everyone, I'm a baptized Catholic. I'm just poking some fun. But also, you know, what's the difference between a religion and a cult? A couple hundred years in IRS tax exempt status. Okay, the mythosaur is framed in the background with 10 flame jets of the forge, as if this mythosaur itself is being roasted in a ceremonial pyre. The 10 jets may also reflect the 10 red petals on the branch of the house beast sigil. As the armorer hammers away, this mythosaur watches from the background, overseeing everything like a crucifix hanging on the wall in the background of a church. Ludwig Göransson's collaborator Joseph Shirley returns to do the music for this season after doing the music for the Book of Boba Fett, and his percussion beats intensely, matching the hammering. The armorer paints this child's Beskar helmet blue. The color coding seems to adhere to each clan within the Watch, and as we see with Paz Vizsla, the Vizslas wear shades of blue. The procession is flanked.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people like the prevailing theory is this might be Paz's son, or at least somebody within the same clan because of that coloration. And also there's a lot of focus in on Paz. When I was watching it initially, I was just kind of thinking, well, obviously he's one of the few that we know, like by name, and we've spent time with. So that's kind of what I was thought we were honing in on. I didn't really connect the dots until a little bit later. And then, of course, I heard a lot of people echoing this theory online. And I think there could be some credence given to it. Some credence?
flanked by banners, one showing the mythosaur, the signet of this watch overall, and then on the left, the symbol of House Vizsla. At the bottom of that banner is that reverse
that's a good point right there. That helps.
The sigil worn by Boba Fett, the sigil of Jaster Muriel, that was Jango's mentor, and this white helmeted one in the procession carries this same flowered branch on a red cloth. Paz Vizsla's son, we think it's a son, Ragnar, is played by Wesley Kimmel, nephew to Jimmy Kimmel, and he's the same kid from some of the in-universe commercials in Marvel's WandaVision. Paz Vizsla is, of course, voiced by Jon Favreau, but underneath the armor, he's played by actor Tate Fletcher, who played an on-camera role in the pilot. We do see some other house banners on display, a green armored Mandalorian holding a red and white banner that might show the animal sigil of Clan Eldar. So what we are seeing here is a type of baptism, thus this boy submerged in water, like in Christian baptisms, and all this is to show us why Din Djarin bathing in the living waters of Mandalore is such a critical renewal. This is the moment that all Mandalorians in the Watch close themselves off from the world. The armorer recites a pledge and the boy repeats, "I swear on my name and the names of the ancestors that I shall walk the way of the Mandalore, and the words of the creed shall be forever forged in my heart." And the subtitles reveal that the armorer said the way, capital W, of the Mandalore, apostrophe in the middle there, which refers to the ruler of the Mandalorian people. Also, the creed shall be forever forged, of course, the concept of forging and armor coming back into their words. But when the armorer places the helmet over Ragnar's head, it seals and locks with this whistle sound effect, the same sound effect that the Darth Vader mask made when it sealed over Anakin's face in Revenge of the Sith. So this encased.
But I have no idea what it's actually sealing to. It's literally just sitting on his head.
Isn't necessarily a good thing. It's really a human face being entombed in metal. But the ceremony gets interrupted. Before the boy can promise to never remove his helmet, the beast, or fate, intervenes. So is the Watch legitimately cursed? Or is it just their strict ritual to shield their faces and wall themselves off from all other connection that is actually cursed?
Yeah, I really don't know which way it's gonna lean because, you know, episode 2 really starts to dive the other way. So I don't know. I'm kind of curious because I feel like we've been pushing against the creed these first 2 seasons, and now after episode 2, it feels like we're kind of starting to try to justify it. We'll see.
So Paz lays down the heavy repeating blaster fire while others fly onto the beast's back to slap on the charges, and I love this shot where the camera is mounted on the helmet, blaster scar visible. And notice on this one's shoulder plate, the W-shaped Deathwatch sigil. This is based on the Beastla Shriek Hawk. Unfortunately for them, their excommunicated apostate has to come bail them out. Din Djarin in his modded N1 Naboo starfighter that he got in the Book of Boba Fett, and he fires what? A proton torpedo at the beast, the same projectile that Luke fired at the Death Star. In the game, the armor repeats what she told him on the Glavis Ring World, as in, "Bitch, I already told you once, bitch!" Now, in Chapter 5 of the Book of Boba Fett, the armor explained how, on the night of 1,000 Tears, the Empire bombed the planet of Mandalore with these fusion bombs that apparently turned the sand into this turquoise glass, like the sand of the real world's Trinity atomic testing site. Din shows a shard of this encasing a metallic plate that contains an inscription in the Mandoa language. Now, it's upside down from the armorer's point of view. If you flip it, on the 4th line, you can make out "you out of the field," which is part of the King James Bible Old Testament Exodus Book 10 verses 5 through 6, and credit to General Anubis on Reddit for being the first to translate this story. "And they shall cover the face of the earth, that one cannot be able to see the earth, and they shall eat the residue of which is escaped, which remaineth unto you from the hail, and eat every tree which groweth for you out of the field, and they shall fill thy houses, and the houses of all thy servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians, which neither thy fathers nor thy fathers' fathers have seen since the day that they were upon the earth unto this day." And he turned himself and went out from Pharaoh. Yeah, it's a bit odd for Star Wars to have real world Easter eggs like this, but you know, they've also referenced Indiana Jones on Andor and E.T. in the prequels. This is referring to the 8th plague of Egypt, when Moses had God send locusts upon the crops when Pharaoh refused to free the Hebrews. I actually referenced the Prince of Egypt in my deep dive live stream, and this is the part where it's like, "Thus saith the Lord, thus saith the Lord." Awesome movie.
God, I love that movie, man.
Plagues of Mandalore, a similarly cursed people seeking relief from forces trying to smite their firstborn sons, which actually might have inspired the beast's crocodile jaws, like the crocodiles of the Nile that the slave children were thrown into by the Egyptians, and the croc-headed Ammit being the Egyptian devourer of the dead. But are the Mandalorians the Hebrews or the Egyptians, the slaves or the oppressors? Sure, they're diasporatic wanderers like the Hebrews were, but they were forced out of their ancestral lands due to, some believe, their own folly. But we could see Mando as Moses, who leads the people through the desert, but never himself makes it to the promised land. That was the job of Joshua, his successor, which might be who Grogu is. Though Grogu is kind of the bastard of the basket. Notice Grogu is wearing chainmail under his robes. This Beskar chainmail was given to Grogu as a gift by Din Djarin in Chapter 6 of the Book of Boba Fett. Grogu chose this instead of Yoda's lightsaber. While in hyperspace, Grogu gazes up to see a giant shadow keeping pace. These are the Purrgil, a semi-sentient species of hyperspace whales who first appeared in Star Wars Rebels and carried off Ezra Bridger and Grand Admiral Thrawn into hyperspace, never to be seen again. Rebels ended with Ahsoka reunited with Sabine Wren in search of Ezra, and in Mando Season 2, Ahsoka revealed she was still searching for Thrawn. So this sighting of the Purrgil here is a key indicator that we are getting closer to Ezra. And I just love the scale of it. The immense size of the Purrgils compared to the Starfighter. But something even deeper is going on with Grogu here. The blue light, the whale shadows just makes it seem like we're underwater. So Din Djarin is aiming to re-baptize himself this episode, but Grogu is going through his own aquatic style baptism, reaching out to these whales, bonding with them through the Force. We did see in the Boba Fett finale that with that Rancor, he is able to connect with creatures like this. These whales could be telling Grogu where Ezra is. How does Grogu respond?
I think we're reaching right now, man.
He goes down and cuddles with his Mandalorian papa. He doesn't want to follow a Jedi path right now. This is the way. So they return to Navarro, and across the town,
I think that all that was a
greenery.
big old
Remember,
reach.
Navarro has a volcanic surface, and in the overhead shot, you can see the town is on a lava field. So the greenery is similar to how after a volcano erupts in the real world, it enriches the soil and allows dense forestation to form. Compared to Season 1, Navarro has undergone a dramatic upgrade, visible even from this front gate, which is no longer crumbling. Grogu also has a new bassinet with a headlamp light on the side. They pass some Nuna roasting over a fire. These are the common delicacy in the Star Wars universe that you can actually get at Galaxy's Edge. They taste like turkey, because they are, I guess. There's also a COO series cook droid, like the one we saw in the Book of Boba Fett, and another upgrade from before when Kawaki monkey lizards were being roasted by Jawas on a spit. Now
they're just kind of hanging out.
Lizards are populating the trees and somehow moving without puppet hands up their butts. The protocol droid tells Mando, yes, since this is a volcanic area, they have geothermal hot springs. Greef Karga will later push these on Din as well. Another example of Din Djarin being lured by the waters of other places on his voyage to the living waters of Mandalore. This episode really is just a journey to find the right bathtub. We see this band with a couple Twi'leks and a Gran race. We pass a Mon Calamari. Perched on the statue of IG-11 is a long-tailed bird. Thought that was interesting. But IG-11 is totally Captain Morganing atop some stormtrooper helmets. Also interesting how some guy keeps a small version of that reptilian bat that attacked them in Season 1. He's domesticated it. It's a pet on his shoulder. You know, like those cool guys who walk around with parrots. But when Grogu and Din look up at the statue, I love that they animated Grogu's shadow separately to sell the fact that he's floating. But we also see that the streets are now paved with cobblestones, which they were not before. Greef Karga is now the High Magistrate. Two droids trailing him to carry his cape. Karga's finery and jewelry is a bit much. I'm worried about this guy. He uses fun horizontal wipe edit, matching it on the motion of Grogu force pushing, spinning the chair around. Just a nice bit of visual flow there. But it's also interesting how Greef tells Din he can hang up his blaster when later we realize he really wants Mando to be his marshal, the head of security. So Greef is still being a bit deceptive. The guy keeps a golden bust of himself in his office. I mean, come on. The pirate Vane is a Nikto played by Marty Matulis, a very physical performer with a number of roles with heavy prosthetics, including, trigger warning for some body gore here. Actually, I'm gonna blur some of this out. The monstrosity from
my lord.
Smile last year. The school with a protocol droid teacher looks like the same school where Grogu spent a day in Season 2 when he snatched those blue cookies, and the tension escalates. Yeah, I love how on the word soft, Mando leans off the tree and you can hear his hard Beskar scraping the bark. We get a classic Western gunslinger pose on Greef as he reveals his blaster on his hip, just like the shot of Han Solo when he stepped into frame to face Jabba in the spaceport in A New Hope. Greef says Cara Dune has been recruited by the Special Forces and that Moff Gideon is facing a New Republic war tribunal, which could be an analogy to the Nuremberg trials that prosecuted war crimes committed by the Nazis. They dismantle IG-11's statue to try to rebuild him, and we hear Taika Waititi's voice return as he defaults to his original programming before Kuiil reprogrammed him to be a nurse. Yeah, IG-11's actually reverting to the last thing he said before Mando shot him down to save Grogu in the pilot episode. He crawls toward them like Terminator to Sarah Connor, and I love the stop motioning.
Yeah.
It just looks like the old school design.
It's so creepy.
Really cool in 80s Star Wars films, but definitely makes him look real creepy too. Mando tells Greef that he cannot handle IG-11 with his limbs if things go scud. Scud being an in-universe term, Palimoto in Season 2 referred to a skank and a scud pie. There's also the character of Scud, the disposable assassin, Rob Schraub's comic about a malfunctioning robot assassin who does kind of look like an IG droid. The Anzellans are here. They're all voiced by Shirley Henderson, who also voiced Babu Frick in The Rise of Skywalker, and this is the actress who played Moni Myrtle. So the Anzellans are renowned droid repairmen because their eyes can spot super tiny details in the wiring. Mando sits inside this tiny workshop looking like Gandalf and Bag End in The Fellowship of the Ring. Yes, hoodoo is the Huttese word for bantha fodder, so our man does speak Huttese. And Grogu hugs the Anzellan, and I just love one puppet hugging another puppet. Real Miss Piggy and Kermit vibes here. And
I didn't know if he was was hugging him or if he was just trying to, like, take him away to eat him or some shit, because we never know with Grogu, man.
I just love that they had to build one merged puppet to pull this off. The pirates return in the asteroid field, and Grogu tucks into Din's bandolier strap to stay snug. During the chase, the N1 legitimately
that is a good detail.
and synced to Joseph Shirley's music and a blast of Ludwig Göransson's flute. With each of these hits, Mando takes out each pirate one by one. But it was all a trap to lure Mando into Gorian Shard. His pirate ship looks like an old Republic Thranta-class heavy cruiser. In the concept art at the end of the episode, we see this pirate ship has its own badass launch bay at the top of it. Pirate King Gorian.
That ship, it does exist. I can't remember where it was from, but I've seen images of it. Like that exact ship model. Yeah, I don't know. I can't seem to find it now, but I could have swore I've seen that ship design before. I don't know. Oh well, couldn't find anything.
Shard, one of the most amazingly designed Davy Jones motherfuckers I've ever seen in Star Wars. It's played by Nonzo Anozie, Zara
nice.
from Game of Thrones. Din boosts out of there, piloting to Kalevala, the home world of House Kryze, mentioned a few times in Clone Wars, but never shown in live action until now. This rain-soaked castle strikes the sharp angles, evoking Dragonstone from Game of Thrones, and it forces Din into yet another soaking, the wrong dousing of water on his path to the right bathtub. He even carries on with Bo-Katan in the next scene completely soaked. This great hall is empty, and it's covered in the banners of the Night Owl sigil of Bo-Katan, which is pretty sad considering it seems like Axwos and Koska Reeves abandoned her when she didn't come back for the Darksaber. Kind of like she threw her own birthday party and no one showed up. Bo-Katan lounges casually, bored, despondent in her throne, her leg pointing toward this interesting carved tableau of her warring ancestors. At the top of that dog pile is one with a sword. Really, the only Mandalorian known with a sword historically is Tar Vizsla or someone else from House Vizsla in his family tree. I wonder if this tableau shows the war of the Kryze household. The other side, a tableau that would be to Bo-Katan's right, might show another tableau that shows them finding peace. War on one side, peace on the other, like the US presidential seal with the eagle. One side with the arrows representing war, one side with the olive branch representing peace. And in this case, Bo-Katan's leg would be angled to the war side. We never see the other side in the scene, maybe because Bo-Katan is unable to
love
see
the reaches here,
when
man.
these two first met in season 2 on Trask, the positions were reversed. It was Bo-Katan who wanted to go to Mandalore. Din Djarin was the one who believed it was cursed and poisoned.
That planet is cursed. Anyone who goes there dies.
But now it is Bo-Katan who says, but we know there is some Mandalorian magic. We just don't know if the magic is a blessing or a curse. Are they the chosen people or the doomed people? We will find out next week when Din heads to the ruins of Sundari. Hey, a reminder to subscribe to our new channel, Deep Dive, and you can support us by
Good breakdown. I don't know how I feel about some of the stretches there, but pretty solid overall. Nice little catches, little Easter eggs. Let's move on to episode 2. Here we go.
ROCKSTARS, I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 2, Chapter 18, The Mines of Mandalore, where, spoiler warning, the Mythosar is no longer myth. Let's break down this episode scene by scene. All the Star Wars Easter eggs, the details you missed, and the mystery of the Mythosar. Because yeah, we got questions. Also, subscribe to our new channel, The Deep Dive, with even more pointed analyses of the titles you love, and you can support this growing network by grabbing some merch at nerdriot.shop, like our new Mandalorian-inspired The Way collection. We open on Tatooine in the city of Mos Eisley. Land speeders racing through the streets as fireworks pop overhead. Yes, they're using the same sound effect from the pod racers drifting in Phantom Menace. This race is part of the Bunta Eve celebration, a holiday celebrated on Tatooine with pod racing tournaments. It was actually the reason behind the pod race that led to Anakin's freedom.
Yep.
There's a big race tomorrow on Bunta Eve.
Bunta Eve celebrates Bunta Histilik Shadru, who is a Hutt who ascended into godhood. In the town of Mos Eisley over on the left, you can see another speeder doing donuts in another courtyard.
Oh, nice.
Suspended over the alleyways. Meanwhile, of the two racing speeders, the one in the lead bumps into the side and stalls out, allowing the one trailing him to take the lead. Amy Sedaris returns as Pelimoto.
Dude, they're drifting too. Like, I made a little joke. It didn't make it into my edit or anything like that. It was like it was a Tatooine drift. Wasn't a good one, but it's still one.
Ripping off a Rodian, her pit droids carry a pole. This is the same prop we saw the last time we were here in the Book of Boba Fett Chapter 5. This is the same pole that Han Solo used to try to brace the trash compactor walls on the Death Star to New Hope. Among her droids is also a BD unit droid, the same type as BD-1, Cal Kestis' companion in Jedi Fallen Order in the upcoming Jedi
I just got Battlestar. I need to read it soon.
R5D4 is the same one with the busted motivator that the Jawas tried to sell to Luke and Uncle Owen. Peli tells the Jawas to paint the stolen parts from this same speeder so that they look different, painting the parts to look different. That is what the Mandalorian clan is doing with their Beskar pieces to differentiate each other. Their Beskar was stolen from them in the Purge, and now they are in a process of reassembling their multicolored fragments into something that can work together collectively. Grogu leaps out of the cockpit.
Just like Grogu, that was a leap to connect that. What the I mean, you can thematically make that make sense. Is that what they had in mind when they read that scene or put it together? I highly doubt it. But, I mean, you never know, man.
And Peli says he leaps like a Lurman. Lurman are the mammals from Maigito.
Oh,
who
yeah.
appeared a few times in Clone Wars. Grogu utters what sounds like a first word. Yeah, Peli says he said Peli, but it sounded more like Bucket or Beckett. Beckett was Woody Harrelson's character in Solo: A Star Wars Story. I don't think Grogu knows him. I guess he could have met him in the early years, but Grogu utters a lot of stuff in this episode. He's just babbling up a storm. Peli asks if Din Djarin took on Boba Fett in the Hutts, and if the Hutts are back, referring to the Hutt twins that Boba Fett negotiated with in the Book of Boba Fett. Now, Peli has a gap in her teeth because she lost that tooth in the finale of the Book of Boba Fett, something that Amy Sedaris actually said was her improvised idea. Peli asks the Jawas if there's anywhere they can find an IG unit memory circuit, and she tells Din, sorry, no chance cubes, as in no dice. Chance cubes being the red and blue-sided dice that Watto and Qui-Gon used to roll for Anakin and Shmi in Phantom Menace. Now, IG units were Empire-era assassin droids. Now that the Empire's done with, there's not too many IG units left out there, except maybe IG-88, who is the assassin in The Empire Strikes Back. We don't know what happened to him. He could be out there somewhere.
Especially considering they're designed, if they are captured or obsolete or about to die, to detonate so that they can't be recovered or retrofitted or reverse engineered. Well, that didn't work too well with 11, did it?
R5 backs away in fear from Din. He trembles, and Peli says that he served in the rebellion. Technically, R5 did kind of serve the rebellion by intentionally blowing that motivator at R2-D2's request so that R2 could go to Luke and Leia's stolen Death Star plans would make their way to Obi-Wan. So R5...
Wait, is that real? I've never heard that. Is that legit? Like he blew up on purpose?
I did play an important role there. All this was covered in the Red One story from the anthology from a certain point of view. As Peli loads them all in later, I love how behind her, the pit droid swings the trash compactor pole around, forcing the other one after duck, and eventually just gets smacked in the head. They depart through the Boonta Eve fireworks, and it looks a hell of a lot better than a similar scene in Wonder Woman 84.
If that is true, like, I don't think I like that. I just think that's silly. You know, you could still, like, any happenstance of, like, chance like that, like, there is no luck, like, there's just the will of the Force. Like, you could always pass off these coincidences as just the will of the flow of the Force willing these things to play out in the way that they do. Like, you don't need to go any further than that to make it any more contrived. God damn.
Is good. But it can be better.
R.I.P. Patty Jenkins.
That's the best. That's the best thing that came out of that movie
so
was
as they approached Mandalore, Din
the
Djarin
Pedro
describes the
thing,
planet to
man.
Grogu, saying it was once green and beautiful when the songs were written, but he says he's never actually been there. The surface of Mandalore was scorched in an event called the Mandalorian Cataclysm. This is long before any of the events we've seen. This was the final war between the Mandalorians and the Jedi. The Armorer referred to these wars in Chapter 8 from Season 1.
The songs of eons past tell of battles between Mandalore the Great and an order of sorcerers called Jedi.
Mandalore the Great was the first leader of the Mandalorian people. Din points to the moon of Concordia, that's his home, and
I'm still waiting, man. I'm still waiting. If we're ever going to get it, it's going to be somewhere in this show. I want to hear about my boy Revan, man. We know he's canon. Bring him in. He, she, whatever they go with. I don't even give a shit at this point. Just mention Revan. And the onslaught between them and the Mandalorians, where he brought the war to a close between the Jedi and them.
home of the Death Watch that the Armorer mentioned in her history of A Night of a Thousand Tears in the Book of Boba Fett. He also mentions the planet Kalevala on the navigation screen, which is all part of the same system. Din tells Grogu that a Mandalorian has to understand maps and know their way around, and that way he'll never be lost. This sets up how Grogu is able to navigate back to Kalevala, and I guess R5 helps him out too. But on a deeper level, Din is explaining that core to being a Mandalorian is to be a homeless diasporatic wanderer. When Bo-Katan told Din last episode, go home, it was a knowing insult. None of them can really go home. Not even Bo-Katan Bo-Katan and her empty husk of a castle.
That's true.
Stretching over the rocky landscape of the planet are these massive sections of the turquoise-colored crystal that we saw last episode. A pretty cruel mirage when you think about it. When you see green, you think it's going to be vegetation. But no,
that's
it's
a good
on the
point.
other side of two destructions. This is formed by the sands of the planet being melted in the fusion blasts. As R5 rolls over to the cave, you see some smart use of the volume here. That's the 360-degree LED interior set that they shoot a lot of these things on. Notice there's a wet puddle surface that reflects the LED screen above showing the sky, but also reflects R5 as he rolls past. They use something practical and tangible, the R5 droid, to blend with what would otherwise just be a glowing backdrop, making the whole thing just feel more real to the viewer. These kind of tactics, along with characters having actual emotional connections with their environments, something you can feel even through their helmets, is why I think The Mandalorian has always gotten better use out of the volume than the Marvel Studios titles have. When R5 disappears, Mando tells Grogu to seal himself in his pod as Mando checks the atmospheric conditions, telling us that this new bassinet that Din got for Grogu is airtight and has its own breathing apparatus. I mean, this thing could probably go underwater and in space if it ever comes to that. As Din walks around outside, you can hear his suit's breather inhaling and exhaling, putting us inside of Din's helmet with him and giving us some real Darth Vader vibes, like an overall creepy sensation as we're exploring the surface. Grogu sits up in the cockpit looking concerned, and Din is able to sense this kid's eyes on him, so he turns around to reassure him. Din spelunks through this crystal cave, bathed in turquoise light from the glass above, giving this descent an aquatic feel, like Mando is already taking his first steps into those living waters. He looks out over the ruins of the covered city of Sindari, its 3D cityscape that we saw in Clone Wars, now covered in debris, but with natural light pouring in. Like the helmets worn by the Mandalorians of the Watch, the Mandalorians would encase their cities in other types of chrome domes, and now a crack in that shell has forced its way in, bringing in this green, symbolically mirroring the way a little green force of nature pierced Din's helmet and got him to open up. Din gets attacked by Alamites, who carry these weapons carved out of that same green glass, showing how they have adapted to the new planet's surface. Din ignites the darksaber, and immediately the blade lowers in his hand, showing how he is still struggling with the weight of it, as he did in Chapter 5 of the Book of Boba Fett, in that butcher shop, and while fighting the armor in Paz Vizsla. Those scenes harken back to Rebels, Season 3, Episode 15, Trials of the Darksaber, when Sabine Wren trained with the Darksaber with Kanan Jarrus, and we learned one's ability to lift and use the Darksaber effectively is really a factor of the wielder's connection with the Kyber crystal inside.
The blade feels lighter.
You're connecting with it. It's becoming a part of you.
So Din Djarin still has not fully connected with it. So when he swings, he loses control, and now he takes a beating from one of the Alamites. Din's only able to fend it off, not with a Darksaber, but with a vibroblade in the leg. He continues to pathetically drag the Darksaber around on the ground and really gets most of his successful hits with punches, with jabs. But he finally stabs the final Alamite and deactivates a lightsaber, as if relieved to turn the thing off, and leaves a vertical slit in the chest. A nice bit of continuity, since the Darksaber is a flat blade. It's not a cylindrical saber like other lightsabers are. Outside, Din has R5 run an analysis on the air, and the holo projection shows Aurebesh number 95%, I assume. The numbers in Aurebesh look mostly like Arabic numerals, and Din says Bo-Katan was right. Mandalore is not cursed. Generous of him to credit Season 2 Bo-Katan from Trask, and not the Bo-Katan he just talked to last episode, who said that there was nothing for them there, showing that he still believes in the hopeful Mandalorian inside. Din descends using his jetpack while Grogu's floating bassinet can apparently defy any level of gravity. They pass various fauna on their way down. Just a little clue that not only wildlife exists down here, but there is a food chain, and thus something for an apex predator, a mythosaur, to feed on. As Qui-Gon says, there's always a bigger fish. And Bo-Katan actually later says
that is immediately what I thought of when we saw it down there. I was like, holy crap, Qui-Gon, man.
That Alamites used to live on the wastelands on the outskirts of the town, and so if things can survive here, something else might be able to survive too. Din finds this area with half-buried Mandalorian armor, and Ludwig Göransson's flute comes back here. And I love how at first, the T-visor forms the shape of a pickaxe. But before we can even wonder who these Mandalorians were, it's revealed to all be a trap from this creature, who seems to have laid all this armor here as a treasure to spring the trap, using the Beskar armor bones of past Mandalorians who wander down here to catch future ones. This creature is gnarly. He's a fusion of mechanized parts, but one highly expressive, menacing eye. I love seeing how all of its insectoid segments interact with each other, its yellow tubes flopping around as it chirps like a beetle. Grogu tries to pry open the trap with the Force, but he draws the captor's attention and flees. As he floats back down this tunnel, he passes the predator creature that we saw before, and then suddenly snaps its gator jaws in the headlight, reminding me of the movie Alien, when Dallas crawls through the Nostromo vent shafts, and a xenomorph suddenly appears in his flashlight. On the way out, an Alamite jumps in front of Grogu, but Grogu, who's taken out a Mudhorn before, has no time for this bullshit, and Force slaps Four Eyes. Grogu then does a front flip into the cockpit, and that flying predator that snapped at him before had been chasing him the whole time. As they depart, I'm not really sure where Grogu's floating pod went on that starfighter. That's a pretty big, bulky pod. Starfighters aren't really meant to have a ton of room for storage. R5 pilots.
Yeah, it just kind of disappeared.
Return to Bo-Katan's throne room. Bo-Katan has adjusted her sitting position from a bored lounge to now a bowed head. And here in this shot, we do briefly see that engraved tableau on the other side of the throne. Just one figure on the end of it. This may be a
with a
peaceful
spear
scene from the history of House Kryze to contrast the warring dog pile
like
on the other
quite
side.
he's holding a spear though.
And assumes it's Din Djarin in the starfighter. It says, let's get rid of him once and for all. Yikes! Does Bo-Katan mean kill Din Djarin, or just threaten him so much he stays away from her forever? A conflict between these two characters is definitely being set up.
I think she just wanted him to go away. I don't think she would, like, I don't think she was threatening violence.
She was ready to fight him. Bo-Katan fires up the Gauntlet. This is her Kamar-class fighter from Clone Wars, and she pilots down to the ruins of Sundari with a lot more confidence piloting through that storm, as if she's revisited the surface before. She looks upon the ruins with shame, telling Grogu,
It didn't always look like this.
Structurally in this episode, I think it's interesting how Grogu walks this same path, but with two different Mandalorian chaperones. It's almost like getting back-to-back tours of a haunted graveyard, given first by a guide who grew up on stories about this place, but then by someone who actually used to live there in a graveyard. That metaphor didn't really make sense, but you get it. Bo-Katan looks out over the Civic Center and says, this was once a beautiful civilization. My family ruled over it all. Now it's a tomb. She's referring to her house, House Kryze. Her father, Adonai Kryze, who was killed during the Great Clan Wars, which resulted in the militant traditionalists getting banished to Concordia, and they became the Death Watch. But when the father died, Bo-Katan's older sister, Duchess Satine Kryze, succeeded him. Satine was Obi-Wan's ill-fated love, who was killed by Maul with the Darksaber right in front of Obi-Wan. Bo-Katan tells Grogu, I knew quite a few Jedi, you know. I don't know what they taught you about us, but there was a time when we actually got along quite well, fought side by side. Bo-Katan is referring to a lot of the past. The events of Clone Wars, when she fought alongside Obi-Wan, after she left the Death Watch and turned on them, and then later in Season 7, when she and Ahsoka Tano retook Mandalore from Maul, and also when Bo-Katan appears in Rebels, she fought alongside Jedi like Kanan Jarrus and Ezra Bridger. But it's interesting how she says, I don't know what they told you about us. Grogu lived throughout most of that history, and Bo-Katan isn't that much older than Grogu. Bo-Katan fights a few Alamites using her lassos and her...
Yeah, but like he never, up until his freedom, he had never known life outside of the Jedi Temple, right? So, what does he know?
Circular arm shields, slaying these guys even without the Darksaber. And on the last kill, she looks back to the camera and she asks Grogu, do you think your dad was the only Mandalorian? I love this because Bo-Katan calls Din Djarin Grogu's dad. She sees it. We all see it. The captor drains Din Djarin of his blood while a little pump droid begins sucking out this fluid. Bo-Katan shoots the pump and engages the captor, lassoing the Darksaber and igniting it. Interestingly, not seeming to struggle with the weight as much as Din did. So should the Darksaber be won by combat? Or can someone who claims it a different way still connect with that Kyber crystal? Bo impales him through his
I don't think the crystal gives a shit. It's what the clans care about, though. The crystal doesn't give a fuck. You know, I mean, obviously, I mean, it hasn't been passed by this tradition in some time, regardless of what happened. It's been stolen, thieved, passed around, handed off, and nobody's had problems wielding it without traditionally connecting with it in the way that they're supposed to connect with their weapon. Din's got something else wholly going on. I don't think the actual tradition behind it matters anything to the saber itself, but to the mysticism behind the creed, the clans, and all of that. Like, you know, this whole ritualistic idea that we've been kind of bouting with for, what, going on 3 seasons now.
Organs, like Obi-Wan blasting General Grievous's heart, but the captor detaches from the body and the head crawls away like a cockroach, which feels like an homage to John Carpenter's The Thing when the alien detaches the head and sprouts spider legs to whirl away. But Bo-Katan's able to use the Darksaber to slice apart the captor's larger droid attachment, first taking out its legs and then beheading it. Bo-Katan makes some pong soup for Din Djarin, which is so nice. Din insists he must follow his creed, define the living waters, saying the creed is all their scattered people have left. Bo-Katan says that their infighting made all the Mandalorians weak and enabled the Empire to smash them. And again, this infighting is really a tradition rooted in the Darksaber, something that, according to their tradition, must be won by combat, meaning one Mandalorian has to fight another Mandalorian to win it. Fighting in civil wars is just part of their history, and that really has been the curse of their people.
Much like the Sith. Look what happened there.
people. So in that regard, the Darksaber represents the ultimate Mandalorian curse. It doesn't unite Mandalorians, it only divides them. So they enter the mines.
That's a
and
good
Bo-Katan
point.
says she actually visited these living waters when she was a girl. She recited these same creed words, but to her it was just a theatrical spectacle that the royal family did, as opposed to something that had any meaning. But for Din Djarin and for the armor, for the whole watch, there is true magic in these words. For Bo-Katan, it was just empty words. This is truly what this episode, The Mines of Mandalore, is really about. Are these mines empty, or is there something inside? And in the Living Waters chamber, Bo-Katan reads a Mandoa plaque. These mines date back to the age of the first Mandalore. According to ancient folklore, the mines were once a Mythosar lair. Mandalore the Great is said to have tamed the mythical beast. It is from these legends that the skull signet was adopted and became the symbol of our planet. I love it. It feels so educational, right?
Yeah.
As if field trips would be brought through here. But Mandalore the Great is really the founder of this planet. This is a figure who existed in an expanded universe, aka Legends fiction, but has survived into canon. It was the first guy who tamed and rode the Mythosar. But historically, the Mythosar were hunted into extinction by the first settlers of Mandalore and died off long before the great cataclysm that scorched the planet. And structurally, the end of this episode mirrors the beginning of episode 1 of this season, a Mandalorian baptism ceremony interrupted by a large beast coming up from beneath the waves. And that's what we see here in this Living Waters baptism. Din Djarin repeats the same words, but gets cut off at a specific moment. The kid was cut off when he promised never to take off his helmet. Din Djarin was cut off when he said that these words would be forged in his heart. It's almost like fate always intervenes to keep people from fully completing
think
the
about
words
that.
of this baptism, because the words themselves are not important, yet there is still some magic to the Mandalorian lore. I love how Bo-Katan turns off her helmet light to better see Din's light through the murk, but in doing this, she misses the massive Mythosar at first when she passes it. She doesn't notice until she ascends with Din in her arms. She sees a massive tusk and an eye and a growl coming through the water. As in legend, the Mythosar is gigantic. It's the size of a city.
dude.
And it leaves us with so many questions. How is the Mythosar still alive? Are they aquatic or amphibious?
wild.
Is it sustaining itself on just alamites and other fauna that wanders into the water? Did it start small and grow into this? Was it always down here? Was it down here on the day of Bo-Katan's baptism? Does it know her and remember her? Are there more
Oh, that would be
Mythosars?
cool.
And was it seen only by Bo-Katan, or did Din Djarin see it too? Did both of them need to be together for it to present itself? Circumstantially, that is absolutely true. Mandalorians needed to come together and help each other and save each other for them to find their ancestral beast. But what's interesting is, if Din Djarin was passed out, if he didn't see it, will he believe her? Is this going to be a wedge between them? Bo-Katan begins the season as a total skeptic, someone who used to put her faith in reclaiming the Darksaber, but when the Darksaber failed her, she'd lost her faith. But now, seeing the Mythosar has given her something greater and older than the Darksaber, something truer to the Mandalorian ancestry to believe in. The living waters of Mandalore are life. This actually might be the turquoise fluid that was poured in the opening shot of the season by the armorer.
Also, it's not, if you, somebody had mentioned this in the comments, that I don't want to take credit for this at all, but like, you know, when she had to dive into the water, put on her helmet to dive into the waters after Din, and we haven't seen her take her helmet off after that, but this whole episode, from Din's perspective, was him sharing his belief in the words. Like, if they don't have this creed to live by, what do they have at all as a people right now? And his faith in it all actually meaning something, whether it's what the rest of his clan mean or not, it means something to him. And him, like, what was just theater, what was just nothing, what she never put faith in herself, she's seeing through his eyes now. And they're both here by creed, by law of their clans or whatever. They can be bathed of their sins and washed away of it, baptized, if you will, here in these waters. And she has to put her helmet back on and dive into those waters with him. She doesn't recite the creed, but she herself goes down and has her own baptism in these waters as well. And like he pointed out, who knows if Din even saw this thing? Is this more about reclaiming and redeeming Bo more than it is redeeming Din in this moment? It is both. They do both dive in. They do both bathe in these waters, but it seems like this is, the focus wasn't on Din's redemption in this episode, oddly enough. The way it was structured, framed, like with the cinematography and the focus of the episode towards the end and all that. It was more of like a transition, a handoff. So I don't know. So maybe it was because Bo didn't go about things the proper way before. Well, proper way before. This will be about maybe eventually, because I'd always be talking about maybe Din will become the Mandalore or whatever, the one that unites the clans. But what if this is more about Bo what if in the end it's actually about her coming back and doing things the right way? But if that is the case, she would have to, by their creed, beat him in combat to take the Darksaber, which I don't know if we'll cross that road. Or maybe she'll just follow him now because of that and give faith into what he now believes just by seeing the things she's seen.
And so we come back to the mystery of the armorer. Did the armorer know the mythosaur was down here when she sent Din Djarin into these waters? Did she do that to feed the beast with a human sacrifice? Something she does with many black sheep from her clan. Or could this have been a test by the armorer to see if the mythosaur would present itself to a worthy Darksaber wielder? Comment down below with your thoughts.
Oh damn, I didn't wait. I should have just waited to hold that thought. All right, guys, check out their merch, check out their channel, subscribe, like their videos, all that stuff. Great work, man. I really loved like the pulls in this. One thing I'll say, like every now and then I do think they completely reach out into the stratosphere with some of their ideas and interpretations. But like every now, like I love, but what I do really appreciate about New Rockstars is the way they analyze the thematic elements of the story structure, the camera angle choices, the framing, composition, and all these things. And they do try to analyze what the image itself is trying to convey. And, you know, a lot of, not a lot, but most breakdown channels will just focus on the Easter eggs, the facts themselves. One thing I do really like is they go into like the interpretive element of, you know, the medium. I really do appreciate that about this whole thing. Yeah, man, these first 2 episodes were pretty damn solid, and episode 2 took us in a direction I didn't think we were going to be heading. Especially this early. I did not expect us to be visiting the mines in the 2nd episode, which just raises a lot of questions as to what is the structure of the rest of the season going to be like? What's the next for Din and Bo? I cannot wait to get into this week's episode, guys. So if you haven't seen my reactions, go check them out. But thank you all for hanging out with these. Sorry again that these were delayed, and we'll see what happens, and hopefully we'll be a little more on time or timely this week. But keep an eye out. Subscribe if you're not already. Let me know your thoughts. Did you catch anything that they might have missed? Sound off the comments. Let me know your thoughts down below. We'll carry on the conversation after the video. Before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends, Manny Sher, Ryan, Karen, Jason Coleman, Billy Vane, Yori, Corey Scott, Mark Grace, Melito, Robert Anguiano, Raven McGann, Jeffrey Hale, M. Sephiroth, Jake Cantrell, Josh Lee, and Aaron Myers. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. But that's it for this video, guys. I'll see you all in the next one. May the Force be with you always. Take care, everybody.